everyone, it's Lauren from Midland Center for the Arts. Today you are in my personal kitchen. My husband is filming this for us. We're going to do a little kitchen chemistry. I have 3 projects set up that you can try along at home. So before we begin, I do want to say we are going to use our stove today as well as a knife. So please have an adult with you for these experiments. They're for adults and kids to do together. All right, so our very first one, we are going to learn a little bit about acids, bases, and pH. We're going to make a color-changing potion. So I know not everyone watching will know what an acid or a base is right off the bat, but don't let that scare you away. All right, to do this at home, if you want to get a little closer and show our people, you're going to need a red cabbage, or a purple cabbage, I guess they go by the same name, a strainer, a very large bowl to catch our magic potion, and a pot with some water in it, and your stove, of course. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your cabbage and you're going to chop it up into thin slices. And then you're going to add it to our pot. You're going to put some water in here and you're going to boil it. I do recommend, if you have a nice blender at home, to blend half of your cabbage and to puree it. That helps release the chemical that we're looking for from the cabbage skin. I can't pronounce that chemical, so if you're really curious about what it's called, I will type it in the comments below, but I'm not going to say it on film because it's hard to say. So I actually have already done the boiling, but when you do this at home, you're going to want enough water to cover our cabbage. Please ignore my dirty sink. You're going to want enough water to cover your cabbage, and then you're going to boil it until your leaves start to fade and that purple really soaks into the water. And you might notice I have a wax warmer going and some candles around my kitchen. That's because cabbage smells a little bit. So fair warning, this might stink up your kitchen for a day, but it's worth it. All right. So when we're done boiling our cabbage, you're going to use the strainer and the very large bowl to get all that chunk out, and you're going to be left with this beautiful violet colored liquid. This is our pH indicator. All right, so before we actually do our magic color changing potion, I want to explain a little bit of what you're going to see. So everything in this kitchen, including me and Steve, my husband, and you at home, everything is made of very tiny particles called atoms. And when we talk about acids and bases, we're looking for a very specific type of atom. I drew this. I don't have a printer at home, so forgive me if the circles aren't perfect. This is hydrogen. This is the smallest atom on the periodic table of elements. Excuse me. If you want at home, you can check that out and go look at the different types of atoms and elements that we have in our universe. This is the smallest one. It has 1 proton and 1 neutron and 1 little electron here. And this is the important guy. It can sometimes lose this electron, and that's when it turns into an ion. These ions are positively charged, and they can be found in acids and bases. So this is what we're looking for today when we use our color changing potion, which is an indicator. Our indicator is going to give us a really clear, visible sign if these ions are present, because remember, they're really small. We can't see them with our eyes. All right, so you do need 3 clear glasses, or more, or less, at least 1. And I'm going to fill these up a third of the way. With our indicator. All right, so I have just some household substances here that we can test. I'm not going to do them all today, but I have vinegar, lemon juice, baking soda, Tums, baking powder, sugar, salt, and then just plain water. You can test anything in your kitchen. I will ask not to test very harsh chemicals like bleach or cleaners. Sometimes those can release fumes that are bad for our lungs. So stick to the pantry items for this experiment. All right, the first one I'm going to try is our white vinegar here. So I'm just going to take this You might want to get in close, Steve. See, it's this purple violet color. And as I add my vinegar, it's pink. It's a beautiful pink color. Can you get that on film? Should I add a little bit more? Okay. Here's our original cabbage juice. You can tell the difference there. So because I know that vinegar is a very low acid, and I also have done this experiment before, I know that this pink color indicates that those hydrogen ions are in our solution. So this is an acidic substance. I also have a little key on my cupboard here. If it's pink, it'll be an acid. If it stays that beautiful violet, it's going to be neutral. Or if it turns blue, it's going to be a base. So let's test our water. This is just regular water from the tap that I'm going to add in here. Nothing. That stays purple. Water is a neutral substance. It's got a pH of about 7, and we use water to kind of compare acids and bases. So it's a good baseline for your experiment, and I always suggest using it. All right, and then our next and final one that I'm gonna do, you can test more at home, is our baking soda. So this is a powder, it's not a liquid, but I'm gonna add it directly to our indicator. And then I'm gonna grab a knife. Sorry, Steve. I'm gonna grab a knife and stir this up and see what happens. So it might be kind of hard to tell on the film. You can hold it up to the light maybe, would that help? There's our trash can outside. All right. So try this at home, but you can kind of tell on the top here, it's really blue compared to that violet color that we started with. So baking soda is a base. And something fun to try with this experiment is to maybe mix 2 of your color changing solutions. See what happens. Maybe you can get it back to that beautiful violet color like that. All right. You ready for experiment number 2, cameraman?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we're gonna go over by the tea and the spices. So we just learned about acids and bases. So I have an acid here, which is lemon juice, a base, which is baking soda, which we just saw fizz, some dish soap, and a little food coloring for pizzazz. Something really cool about acids and bases, because they have different amounts of those hydrogen ions, when they meet and they get combined, they do an exchange, because all molecules really want to be that neutral. They don't want to be positive or negative. They want to be somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to add my baking soda to my glass. Then just a squirt of dish soap and a little food coloring just because it's fun. And if you are trying this experiment at home and you have a thermometer that your parents don't mind you use, something cool to try would be to take the temperature of this lemon juice before you pour it in here, and then take the temperature of this solution right afterwards. So I did have a plate to catch the mess. Parents, you might want to have something down, paper towel, newspaper, whoops, something. Didn't catch my own mess. So you can do this over and over. What is happening here is when this acid and base meet, they're creating carbon dioxide gas. And the role that our soap plays here is it's actually trapping those bubbles a little bit so we can see it better. It's just making bubbles. So that's really fun to try at home. If you do use a thermometer, let us know in the comments what you find out. All right, so we have one more thing set up for you today. It's over at the stove. So again, you will need a parent to help you with this. If you know me in person, you know that I have quite the sweet tooth. I like to make candy. We do it every year with our family. One thing I've never done before though is rock candy. So we're gonna try that today. What you need for this experiment are some glasses, some skewers, sugar, water, and then some flavoring. I have just regular vanilla here, some mint that I had in my cupboard, and I'm a little extra because I make candy all the time, so I have a whole bunch of different little flavors. You can get these at Meijer or Walmart, but don't make a special trip. Just find whatever you have in your cupboards. And then you can also use food coloring to make them really pretty. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna grab our cup measurer. Ooh, I forgot I put the cabbage in this bowl. Okay. I'm gonna rinse this out because I forgot I threw the cabbage in there. All right, so you're gonna add 2 cups of water to your pot. 1, 2. I'm gonna put that on the stove, and you're gonna get that boiling. So what we're gonna do here today, it's called crystallization. We're gonna make a super saturated solution with this water and sugar, and then crystallization is when it cools, the sugar is gonna precipitate out of that solution and make our delicious candy. Just gotta wait for it to bubble. What flavoring do you want, Steve? I made cherry earlier.
Let's try peach.
Okay. So I'm gonna get a cup of sugar ready to go. While you're waiting, you can prepare your skewers. And you're not even looking at me. Okay, so you have these wooden skewers. What you're gonna do is you're gonna get these wet. Just run them over the faucet really quick. And then you can probably see I have this tray of sugar right here. This is actually really perfect for this. It's a serving tray. But with your wet skewers, you're gonna just roll them around in that sugar a little bit until it's coated. Ooh. I'm always making a mess when I do these things. So you can get in closer. You can see that I have sugar on the stick. These are seed crystals. So you're gonna wanna set these aside to dry completely before we add our solution. What these do is when our sugar precipitates out of our solution that we're gonna make in our pot, these seed crystals give it something to attach to. Kind of gives them the first building blocks of our rock candy. So I'm gonna set those aside to dry. I do have a few that are ready to go, and you can see even when it's dried, the sugar's still stuck on the stick there. And we're just gonna set 1 stick per glass. You can also use mason jars or just anything you can do without for a few days. All right, so our water is starting to bubble. So I'm gonna add 1 cup of sugar. Give it a little stir. You're gonna add 4 cups of sugar total. So we make candy every year in our family, and one of our favorite recipes is honeycomb, as most people know it. We call it seafoam in our family, but I think most people recognize the name honeycomb. That isn't a crystallization chemistry process, but it does involve some chemistry. So I might post one of those recipes down below in the comments. Probably not my grandfather's recipe, that's a family secret, but I'm willing to share a similar one in the comments. So if you're really interested in making candy at home and doing some more chemistry, that is a good one to try. So when water is at room temperature, it can dissolve sugar, but what we're doing here by heating up is speeding up those water molecules, and that makes it able to dissolve even more sugar than it really would. under normal conditions. And that's how we get our super saturated solution, which we need to make this rock candy. Final cup. So once I have all 4 cups in there, I am going to let it get back to boiling, and that's just to make sure that all that sugar is really good and dissolved in there and we don't have any chunkies in our solution. Stop stirring and let that get together. And now this is where you want to choose your flavoring and your food coloring. So my husband asked for peach. There's no peach in this pile. How about root beer, Steve? Is root beer okay?
Sure.
Okay. So you can add as much or as little as you want of this. This is pretty strong stuff in these small containers, so I'm just going to add a few drops. And then root beer is brown, so I guess we could mix maybe some red and blue food coloring in there. And maybe that will make brown. And you can see my solution if you want to get close, Steve. You can see it starting to bubble around the edges again. All right, so I'm going to mix this all together. Ooh, I think I added too much blue. That's okay. We'll have blue root beer rock candy. It's going to taste good. That's all that matters. All right. So all my sugar is dissolved. I'm going to let this boil a little bit more. But once you're done letting it boil, you are going to want to set it aside to fully cool. And that's because when we add it to these glasses with our seed crystals that we made on the stick, we don't want it to dissolve those seed crystals very quickly. We want it to be cool enough where they can remain and act as a guide for those ones that are in the solution. Okay, so I'm going to remove this from our heat. And I did this earlier. So I do have some. This is cherry flavored, Steve. I'm sorry, it's not peach. So what we're going to do is we're going to add our cooled solution. I have a ladle. You can use whatever you have at home. We're going to add that to our glass. You can see this has been cooling for maybe an hour. And it's pretty syrupy, it's pretty sticky. And you can see in the pot that crystallization process has already started, and we have some oh my gosh, I can't speak today. But we have some sugar on the side of our pot there. And that's what's gonna happen in our glass. So the trick to this is we have to make sure that our stick isn't touching the bottom of the glass or the sides. Otherwise, when it's done forming, it'll be really difficult to get out. So I'm gonna add a little bit more syrup. I'm just gonna use this paper towel. I'm gonna poke it over our stick. Just to keep that in the middle there. And you can see it kind of helps keep it right in the middle so it's not touching the sides. And I actually started one earlier. I don't know if you can see this on film, but we can see it in our kitchen. Those crystals are already starting to form. This process does take a little bit. It might take a couple days. It might take a couple weeks. Check your crystals every day. Make sure it's not touching the sides or the bottom, like I said. You might have to readjust every day. But you can watch those crystals grow and that chemical process happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and try some chemistry in your own kitchen. We miss you at the center and we can't wait to get back together again in our museum. But until then, please stay safe and stay healthy and make art virtual.